The Spotlight brought to you by Beacon Plumbing.
Good evening and welcome to The Spotlight. I'm David Rose, and we begin tonight in North Seattle, where a string of student muggings has parents on edge. Seattle police are investigating 14 separate robberies since the end of September. Whitman Middle School kids were among those targeted. The Spotlight's Lauren Donovan reports that families there are taking matters into their own hands.
I've talked to several parents here in the North End, and this mom told me it just feels like we're 1 minute away from something horrible happening, from things escalating. And frustrated by a lack of action from both the public school district and from Seattle police, a lot of parents in this neighborhood took it upon themselves to pull together their own crime data map, pinpointing where these incidents happened, and they hope that map will encourage other victims to step forward.
As a parent, you're worried about the safety of your child to and from school.
Since the first reports surfaced late September, concerns have echoed through North Seattle neighborhoods.
Most of these students are walking alone. These are crimes of opportunity.
Kids walking home from school are ambushed in broad daylight.
There have been uses of force. There's been guns displayed.
Over the last month, it's happened at least 14 times. In a handful of these incidents, children were briefly kidnapped, brought into the stolen car, and forced to share their phone passcodes.
Generally, they are looking for phones, iPhones. They're looking for AirPods. The majority of these since the 19th have been over in the Ballard area.
Just this Tuesday, 3 were reported. Authorities say students near Bishop Blanchette and in the Roosevelt neighborhood were terrorized. As for the culprits,
it's probably the same group of kids, and I say kids, kind of late teens.
Parents I've talked to hope Ring cameras, street surveillance, and tracking apps can be used to pinpoint these repeat offenders. They also want greater accountability from Seattle Public Schools. So I asked, what communication is going on between the Seattle Police Department and local school districts?
On Monday of this past week, we conducted an online virtual training, kind of a crime prevention training for parents.
SPD has also increased patrols in the neighborhood, saying officers are doing overtime to ensure kids' safety.
There's nothing really to prevent these crimes from traveling to other parts of our city.
Another small business in Seattle targeted by criminals, and once again, it was all caught on camera. The latest business hit, a Shell gas station on Seattle's northwest side. This time, detectives say one of the suspects tried to shoot the clerk, but the gun jammed. Dave Detling has the video you'll see only here on The Spotlight, with those robbery suspects still on the loose.
Well, 7 people rolled up onto that store, one of them armed with a gun. In the video you're about to see, the store employee fights back, but to no avail. While it's back to business for employees at the Shell gas station on Holman Road Northwest, off camera, the owner tells Fox 13 he and workers are a little shook. Surveillance camera captured this scene last night around 11:30. Watch as 7 hooded and masked individuals wander around the food mart and then confront the employee. One of the suspects pulls out a gun, points it, and the employee fights back, grabbing one of the masked guys. There's a scuffle. No shot is fired and no one is hurt, but the group of thieves grabs products from behind the counter. Jumping behind the register, they get their hands on vapes and backwoods rolling papers before running out. The gas station's owner says he's been in business for more than 15 years. He's sharing the video to show what small businesses in Seattle are up against when it comes to crime. He says people stealing has become commonplace, but having a gun pulled on an employee brings things to a whole new level, adding he believes Saturday's holdup was planned. Another angle from outside the store shows what happened before things turned chaotic inside. Watch as 2 gray-colored SUVs pull up. The 7 people pile out before hitting their mark. And the gas station owner did turn that video over to police. Meantime, we know that police did return to the scene to collect evidence. If you have any information about this case, give Seattle Police a call.
Detectives say those suspects were driving identical silver Kia Sportage crossover SUVs with no license plates. If you have any information to help identify them, submit an anonymous tip to Crime Stoppers through the P3 Tips app on your cell phone. We have an alarming development out of Normandy Park. Police say a woman walking her dog was forced into a car by an armed man and then sexually assaulted. This happened on Monday. Police say the man initially asked the woman for directions. The woman was later let go after the assault, and she's safe now, but still recovering from the terrifying experience. Tonight, we're hearing from concerned residents.
I'm totally shocked. Like, I would never imagine that happening here. It's everybody try and watch out for each other, and if you see anything, treat it seriously.
Normandy Park's police chief tells us that tracking down this dangerous sex offender is their highest priority. The suspect's described as 30 to 35 years old, possibly wearing a surgical mask. He was driving a blue or dark-colored sedan with aluminum hubcaps. If you have any information, contact Normandy Park Police. Well, tonight, Seattle police are asking for your help to find this dark-colored four-door mid-size sedan with a smashed windshield and damage to the front of the vehicle. It's one of two cars that hit a 60-year-old man right near the border of Seattle and Shoreline, killing him. Neither driver ever stopped. Tony Ridgway was a father of three. He died 2 years to the day his mother passed away. Now his family is waiting for an arrest in the case before they lay his ashes to rest with his mom.
I'm sure they know what they did, and they're probably not proud of it, but it's going to eat them. It's going to eat at them.
That's Tony Ridgway's sister-in-law, Sharon, his oldest sister, Carol, youngest sister, Cindy, and older brother, Rick. They met me at the entrance to the Interurban Trail, right next to North 145th Street and Linden Avenue North, where he was killed on August 4th.
He was walking home at night with his groceries, and he was hit by not one, but two cars and left in the street where he died.
Detectives say the driver in this first car that hit him sped off eastbound on North 145th Street. The second driver didn't stop either.
We want people to know that Tony had a family that loved him and cared about him, no matter what his situation.
Tony battled some demons. They think he'd been on the streets for about a week after getting attacked and robbed in the public housing where he was staying.
With mental health issues these days and addictions, it's more important now than ever that you don't just sweep somebody under the rug or forget that they had a life.
So they're here now with his ashes and his photos of a life remembered, sharing their pain, their anger, and asking for your help so another family doesn't suffer.
We just don't want it to happen again. We need to find out who did this, make them accountable, and bring justice to Tony.
There was a witness who saw the hit and run, but so far they haven't answered their phone when police call. Tony's family is hoping they'll see this story and contact Seattle police. If you know who drives that dark-colored sedan, or maybe you've seen it around your neighborhood with the glass smashed out, or maybe you worked on repairing it, you can remain anonymous when you submit a tip to Crime Stoppers. Call 1-800-222-TIPS or use the P3 Tips app. You will be paid a $1,000 cash reward for any information that leads to an arrest. And more importantly, Tony's family says it will give them the closure they need. When a reported crime is actually a suspect in crisis, the response from law enforcement can be dangerous, even deadly. Since 2016, Seattle police have killed at least 5 people experiencing a mental health crisis or with a prior history of behavioral problems. The department receives more than 10,000 crisis calls every year. And now behavioral health specialists will join police for at least some of those calls. This one is part of a pilot program run out of the city's newest public safety department, Community Assisted Response and Engagement, or CARE. Here's how it works. Uniformed officers will first secure the scene and then turn the call over to CARE team members. They have educational and field experience in behavioral health with additional training in first aid and Narcan administration.
The call types, it's funny how interested people are in 911 call types now. The call types are person down and welfare check. And really what that means is it looks like somebody's not doing well. And often I listen to these calls, people call in and just say he doesn't seem to be okay, or somebody's, on the sidewalk crying. It's always encouraging to me to hear people call 911, not wanting to invoke police, not wanting to be punitive, but knowing somebody needs help.
The other type is welfare checks. The pilot program will initially focus on downtown Seattle. A touching and emotional scene in Everett this week as the city unveiled a newly renamed street, Officer Dan Roach Way. Officer Rocha was killed in the line of duty last year. He was shot and then run over. Everett Police Chief Dan Timmelman says renaming the street is a meaningful way to remember his life and his legacy of serving others. Officer Dan Roach Way used to be the section of Trojan Way near where Rocha was killed. When the spotlight returns,
the caller stating they were at Wenatchee High School with a rifle and that they were going to go inside and kill everyone.
School campuses here and across the country fearful after a string of swatting calls. Now the FBI is stepping in to find who's responsible. Over the past week, we've brought you concerning video out of a high school in Auburn. Police say they're investigating this video that shows a fight outside of Auburn Riverside High. They say it happened before a group wearing masks were let into the school by mistake last Monday, where they ran through the halls, hitting and punching students. Now there are concerns at another Auburn high school, Auburn Mountain View High. The Spotlight's Jennifer Dowling reports several students are under investigation following complaints by parents about possible sexual assaults during what was described as hazing among members of the football team.
Well, the allegations are disturbing. They say their son was held down in a bathroom stall and someone climbed on top of him in a way their private parts were touching. We've agreed to only use their voice to protect their privacy so they could share their concerns about what they say happened at the school.
We're here because our child was a victim of this.
The parents of a 15-year-old Auburn Mountain View High School student say their son was victimized by upperclassmen during what he described as a hazing by members of the football team.
My son was dragged in the bathroom, picked up where his feet were not touching ground by two of these guys that did it.
They describe a situation in which their son was held down and assaulted.
Dragged him into the stall, got on top of him, and dry humped him.
Though they say he told them to get off of him and they eventually complied, the damage was done.
There's probably a lot of kids that are going to be traumatized and scared to come forward because even to some adults, this seems to be normal.
The parents say videos are being shared by students showing similar things being done to other kids as well.
And the fact that there's videos going around of children saying stop, children crying, groups of people in the video, and nobody gets told anything besides, oh yeah, there's going to be parents now chaperone in the locker rooms. Why wasn't there any?
The alleged abuse was reported within the past couple weeks, with their son telling them football practice was canceled Friday.
Without an adult supervision in those locker rooms, these are those outcomes that can happen. And so we are really disappointed as well with the coaches for not being more alert of what's going on behind closed doors and not just focusing on what's going on in the field.
The family's asking other parents to talk to their kids about the incident because they believe there may be more victims.
And I hope this is a wake-up call to a community and all of the school districts around us.
We are going to be a voice for our child and for all the innocent kids and victims that was victimized and that are scared.
School officials, including the principal, sent out a letter to parents that read, "We wanted to inform you about a recent incident that came to our attention on Thursday evening regarding hazing among our JV football players in the JV locker room. As soon as we were made aware of the situation, we started an investigation. In response to the incident, we have taken swift action by suspending multiple players from school and from football for the remainder of the football season. We take this issue very seriously and are deeply concerned that it was not reported earlier. Moving forward, we have implemented additional measures to ensure the safety and well-being of our athletes. Coaches will regularly be in the locker room now while athletes are changing before and after their practice. No athletes will be allowed in a locker room unless there is a coach present." Auburn police say they are investigating and are interviewing members of the football team. The family says they are cooperating with investigators.
It was a time of fear for Washington schools. Over several days last spring, dozens of campuses went into lockdown after 911 calls about an active school shooter. The calls sounded real. On some, operators could hear gunfire in the background, but they were all staged and they were all connected. Spotlight's Taylor Winkle reports the FBI is now investigating who's responsible, and that investigation is taking them to Africa.
If you think of a school being swatted, that's when the SWAT team is called in for a false alarm. Some kids trying to get out of a test might come to mind first, but not in this case. The FBI is looking into a coordinated swatting effort that left hundreds of families on edge and wasted millions in law enforcement response nationwide and right here in Washington. And authorities say with technology, it could all get worse.
Lock the classroom doors.
The sirens don't stop for 5, 7, 10 minutes.
Get down on the ground.
Vehicle after vehicle is going from one point in the city to another.
Cover the windows.
And it's followed by ambulances and fire trucks and.
Turn off the lights and pray you're not the next national headline.
That full response is frightening to people.
That's what happened to students at Wenatchee High School last spring.
The caller stating they were at Wenatchee High School with a rifle and that they were going to go inside and kill everyone. And then in the background, there was audio of shots being fired. They're playing sounds of gunfire.
Captain Edgar Reinfeld with Wenatchee Police says they responded to the call, but within minutes they knew something was off.
We have one call from a caller with an out-of-state area code that doesn't really make any sense, and not one other 911 line in the room is lighting up.
They were being swatted, and they weren't the only ones. Eastmont School District, Shelton School District, Pullman, Walla Walla, Port Angeles, districts all across Washington, all on or within days of each other, put on lockdown while officers search through their buildings, but no sign of any shooting to be found.
This is a hoax. It is a hoax, and in fact, it's a hoax writ large. It's hitting a large area.
The entire United States. The Washington Post reports from September through May, these hoax calls terrorize schools in almost every state. This is video they obtained through records requests, and in it you can see those officers rushing into a Michigan high school, guns drawn. This teacher raises his shirt to show he doesn't have a weapon on his body as they move from classroom to classroom. And while students were barricading themselves and trauma centers were making space, other legitimate calls for service went unanswered. And nationwide, hundreds of thousands of dollars in police response was wasted.
These calls are not victimless by any means, even if there's no real teeth behind them, because law enforcement takes threats like this very seriously.
Now the FBI is stepping in.
And I think what we're seeing, and it's been in the last few years, has gone from people whose motivation may have been just to create some sort of chaos for whatever reason, into a motivation, a financial motivation many times, or maybe trying to elicit from someone else, pictures of them, and if they don't get what they want, they start a campaign of harassment.
That's Steve Byrne, the spokesperson for FBI in Seattle. He says the hoax is rooted in Africa. One
nefarious motivation we have seen a number of times has been these actors actually selling the service of a swatting call to people that are willing to pay them to do it.
A Washington Post investigation found a number of those hoax calls could be linked to numbers provided by the company Text Now, which offers free calls using the internet instead of a regular phone line. Those calls have a connection to Ethiopia. For investigators working to track them, it's nearly impossible. And as technology advances, Burns says it's getting harder and harder for law enforcement to keep up.
The Washington State Fusion Center is collecting data on hoax swatting calls in our schools and working to aggregate that information so law enforcement agencies like the FBI and our police departments can see a wider scope of what's happening.
More and more businesses are going broke from property crime, but Pierce County leaders now want to offer financial help to keep the local economy rolling. That story coming up next. A rise in commercial thefts in Pierce County has some small businesses one crime away from shutting down. The number of burglaries is up 21% over the last 5 years. So now elected officials are looking to use federal dollars to support increased security tools for businesses. More from the Spotlight's Frankie Thompson.
Here on Pacific Highway, it's full of small businesses, from restaurants, beauty salons, to auto shops, and so much more. But the Pierce County Sheriff's Office says this highway is also where they frequently respond to violent and property crimes. The County Council is now considering a grant opportunity to help prevent small businesses from being the next target. Inside Franchise Brothers Barber and Beauty, the team has nurtured a safe space for customers and staff.
You know, things are kind of crazy in the world.
Crazy things happening in Pierce County, too. The Sheriff's Office says in September alone, there were 25 robberies in the county. 19 were armed and 6 were strong-armed. That's up from 16 cases last September. The uptick in crime is one reason why the barbershop is equipped with surveillance cameras and barred doors.
It's a way to kind of deter someone and protect your asset, right? So that's obviously what we're trying to do. I mean, all our tools are pretty expensive nowadays.
Protecting the asset is something the County Council wants to help more small businesses do. Council is reviewing an ordinance of a new grant program to help pay for upgrading security devices and tools. Councilmember Dave Morrell is a co-sponsor.
The last 4 years for small businesses, you know, it have been so challenging with COVID, with the shutdowns of everything. A lot of our small businesses, their savings accounts have been drained and they can't take another theft. I know of multiple businesses that their insurance companies have canceled them due to 2 break-ins, 3 break-ins.
If approved, the ordinance says the program shall seek to reimburse 50% of eligible cost up to $20,000 as a match for one-time expenditures to make physical changes to business premises, like installing lights, alarms, secure doors, fencing, and cameras.
Especially with technology too, you have access to your cameras on your phone, and there's keypad locks, and there's so many different things we can do to try to protect our businesses.
Council will continue reviewing this ordinance further and will bring this up to discussion during the next county budget meetings next month.
Up next, divers discover human remains that are not what they seem. The spotlight continues in a moment. And just in time for tricks or treats, a creepy prank near the Canadian border. Authorities got a report of human remains that turned out to be a plastic skull beer bong. The Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife posted this picture of the discovery. The agency says a paddleboarder on a river in eastern Washington reported human remains in a cave. A wildlife officer and Border Patrol agent took jet skis to the cave and swam inside to investigate. They say someone had stuffed the beer bong full of rocks and sunk it to the bottom as a prank that worked out a little too well. That's all the time we have on this edition of The Spotlight. Until next week, be smart and stay safe.